Hello, everybody. I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes, and welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. Today, first of all, if you hear things knocking over in the background or something, that's probably my friend's rabbits, who may or may not choose to do various exciting things. Exciting for rabbits. So, the book I'm talking about today is Hunter's Moon, which is a book about two teenage girls hitchhiking their way across Ireland in search of fairies and adventure and visiting a lot of places that I can't pronounce, mainly because I never ever remember how to pronounce things that have been written down in Irish Gaelic. I don't tend to remember how to pronounce things that have been written down in Scottish Gaelic either, but I have a better chance. As for Welsh, I wouldn't try, and actually Manx Gaelic isn't bad. That's about the only one that actually looks like it was transliterated sensibly, but neither here nor there. This is a map of various places that they visit. So, the book, The Hunter's Moon, we see here the two girls on the cover, one of which, the one on the right with the backpack, is the Canadian, Gwen, and the one on the left is the one who, after they both foolishly decide to sleep on a fairy mound, because everyone who knows anything about Irish myth knows that if you sleep on a fairy mound, something will kidnap you or kill you, or both. She's run off with fairies, which is why she has spontaneously developed pointed ears in this picture, for reasons that I'm not entirely certain of. So, at the start of the book, Findhabhair, our pointed-eared friend on the left, is visited by Findhabhair, who is king of the fair folk of Ireland. I would guess that the person hanging out in the background there on the cover is Findhabhair. You never quite know with covers, do you? Sometimes the person who does the cover has read the book, or at least read a synopsis, and sometimes they just seem to be working to some plan all their own that nobody quite knows what it is if they've read the book. And they, in any event, back to the actual plot, the two girls are having their various separate adventures, and Gwen has a lot of troubles. She has troubles when her cousin disappears and she's left alone going, oh my god, what do I do? She has troubles when she runs into a leprechaun for the second time because the leprechaun helped them make their way to Tara at the beginning. Not that either of the girls knew that they were being driven by a leprechaun at the time. But he offers to help her and get her started on the path to catching up with her cousin. And it turns out that he's a big honkin' liar and has only offered her one helpful piece of advice, actually, which is to trust the ones with red hair. We meet these two ones with red hair, who are Matt and Katie. And they both believe in fairies and help Gwen on her way. Gwen, who is constantly, throughout most of the first 3/4 of the book, chasing after her cousin Findhabhair and constantly trying to convince her cousin that she can't live the rest of her life in fairy, and yes, it's very nice they've named you queen, but what am I going to tell your parents, for one? And of course, Gwen also goes through the fairly standard in Celtic mythology test of don't eat the food. If you eat the food, you will be trapped there forever. She winds up eating the food because can you just imagine what magical chocolate mousse would be like? I can't, but it must be awesome. And so after having gone through these various things and suffering from a curse that means all food that is not food of fairy looks absolutely horrifying and nauseating to her, she finally manages to get the help of the so-called wise woman, who her proper name is Gronya, but everybody calls her Granny, and Granny's actual grandson, Dara. And Dara is, according to some heritage or other, the king of Inch Island, which, the thing about king is, of course, keep in mind that if you go back to uh, the ancient clannish history, distant clannish history of um, many parts of Europe, you'd have a lot of people who would be the king of an island that is like, you know, 20 square miles, but they have a castle, so they're king. Um, there was a lot of that in many parts of ancient history, and so Dara has the heritage of being the king of Inch Island, and he and his grandmother managed to rescue Gwen and break the enchantment she's partially under. And then that's when we find out the very horrifying news. You know, right after Gwen has gotten an incredibly adorable, hot Irish boyfriend, and Findhabhair seems to be having an awesome time with the apparently super hot king of the fairies, and they both had awesome, exciting times meeting, you know, magical people and fairies and all kinds of other stuff. And that's when they discover it's the year of the hunter's moon. And if you don't want to know the end of the story, you'd better stop here now, because this is an all spoiler zone, so I'm going to be bulling right on ahead. If you're leaving, hope you enjoyed and hope to see you next week. Um, Assuming, you know, anyone's actually watching this. And if you are not actually watching, and if you're don't actually care about whether or not I tell you the ending, onward we go. Uh, okay, everybody here either interested in the ending or doesn't actually care? Great. Um, so that's when they find out about the hunter's moon. Now, this is, again, one of those traditional stories that has been hijacked and used for this book. It's something that a lot of authors do. Take the traditional tales and myths of some place and then just modernize it and say what happens if regular normal people happen to fall into one of these myths. In this case, the myth of Crom Cruach, the great worm, um, he's very much a stand-in for the devil here. And the story goes, the actual traditional story, as opposed to the one in the book, which does summarize it nicely, that the Sidhe, the fair folk of Ireland, whatever you want to call them, at the beginning of time, they cut a deal with the devil. And the deal was that every 7 years of fairy time, not every 7 years human time, but the land of the Sidhe, the land of fairy, it runs on its own time at its own calendar. Every 7 years of their time, they pay a tithe to hell. They send a hostage, they send a volunteer to, in effect, be eaten by the great worm, to be sent to the devil, however you want to see it. And that is done in order, because if they don't do it, then literally all hell breaks loose, and the great worm will come through and devour fairy and destroy their home. And that's what's happening in this book. And Findhabhair has been volunteered by being chosen by Finvara, but makes the conscious choice herself to go and to sacrifice herself to save fairy. And Gwen asks the question, why can't we fight the great worm? Why can't we go in there and try to stop the sacrifice from happening. And so that's what they do. And 7 warriors, so to speak, that is Gwen and Findhabhair and Grania the Wise Woman, not Grania and Diarmuid, the 2 characters from Celtic myth, who are one of the silliest stories ever. And anyone who thinks that it's a great tragedy should keep in mind the second half of the story, when Grania decides that she's going to get married to the king that she decided to scamper away from after they got married with the head of his guard and best friend. Really, the myth of Diarmuid and Grania is it's one of those stories that sounds very dramatic until you get to the end and you face palm. But so Gwen, Findhabhair, Grania, her grandson Dara, and Katie and Matt, the 2 people who Gwen ran into on her travels who helped her, and of course Findhabhair, they decide to go, and they go out the gates of Fairy to where the great worm lies in wait, and they try to beat it. They try to fight it off. They have a battle, the 7 of them against the worm, and they're left in tatters, and they think that they've beat it as it sinks into the lake, and then it emerges whole and well once more, and the what is pointed out at that point is the great worm is not a specific creature. It's not a single person. It is the essence of death. It is the essence of that which waits. It's the essence of, the rot at the root of a tree and all of those other lovely metaphors. And it is something that cannot die because it is an element. It's an element of nature itself. In the same way that that the concept of light can't die, and the concept of life can't die, the concept of death can't die, because he is more than just a being. He is the concept along with being the giant worm. And then he tells them that for having put him through battle, he needs to exact a greater cost, and that he needs an immortal, and that means Findhabhair. And at that point, the king walks to his death, and they leave grieving his death, grieving the fact that it all felt like their efforts were for nothing. And they are greeted upon leaving Fairy, upon returning to the human world, by Findhabhair, who has been made into a human. And he is newborn. He has no memories. He's a newly created being. And it makes this bittersweet ending that is sad because he isn't immortal. He isn't the king of the fairy anymore. The Sidhe have lost their king. They have lost one of their number. And he has lost not merely, of course, a kingship and immortality, but all of the powers and wonders and joy and magic that goes with being who he was. But he's not dead. And he has the chance to live out a human life which has its own wonders and joys and that sort of thing. And I recommend this book for people who have developed an obsession with Celtic myth, however recently, Um, and I hope you all enjoyed listening to me. Thank you.